Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're all having a good one so far. By way of introduction, my name is Ian, and I'm the product manager for the compliance group under the governance stage here at GitLab.
And hello, I'm Grant Hickman, Senior Product Manager for the Security Policies Group.
Today we just wanted to share with you our plans around the deprecation and removal of compliance pipelines, as well as provide a quick overview of the new way that you could be using compliance pipelines, which is in pipeline execution policies, which will be the mechanism by which compliance enforcement will be enacted in the near future. So this is the agenda that we're going to walk through today. We'll first cover off the work that we're doing to move compliance pipelines to security policies and why we're doing this work in the first place. We will then cover off the timeline for moving compliance pipelines to pipeline execution policy, starting with the deprecation of compliance pipelines in 17.3 and finishing with the eventual removal of compliance pipelines in 18.0. Grant will then walk through several items pertaining to pipeline execution policy, such as its benefits, things to look out for, as well as providing a few resources for our users to watch or look at to learn more about pipeline execution policy type. Before we get into the presentation, just wanted to put up a quick disclaimer that this presentation and link pages contain information related to upcoming products, features, and functionality. Please use this information for informational purposes only, and don't rely on this information for purchasing or planning purposes. Cool. So just kicking off with the background to the deprecation of compliance pipelines, I'll just cover off the TLDR of what this whole slideshow is going to be about, as well as the broad scope of work that we are doing to move compliance pipelines to security policies. So let's start off with the big news up front. As of 16 August 2024, or 15 August, depending on the part of the world that you live in, we have officially announced the deprecation of compliance pipelines in the 17.3 release post. As can be seen in this screenshot, which is taken from the deprecation notice, we will be removing compliance pipelines in 18.0 as a breaking change, and we welcome affected customers to read through the links provided in that deprecation notice if you'd like more information. I'll also be posting a link to the notice in the description box of this YouTube video for easier access as well. So to give some background as to why we're committed to this deprecation and removal, we must first understand what compliance pipelines are. Compliance pipelines can be used in GitLab to ensure that specific compliance-related jobs are running on pipelines for all projects in a group. Currently, compliance pipelines are applied to projects through compliance frameworks. However, what we've been hearing from customers is that instead of having two different ways to set these pipelines, e.g. via compliance pipelines and security policies, they will like a single solution to enforce jobs to be run as part of a project pipeline. Furthermore, although compliance pipelines overall provides great flexibility for teams looking to enforce specific jobs, there were additional use cases that customers wanted to see, such as the possibility of injecting jobs into the pipeline instead of overriding it, which compliance pipelines was unable to perform or sustain in the long run. As such, this feedback resulted in an overall strategy to move customers away from compliance pipelines and into security policies instead, specifically to use pipeline execution policy types. There are several other reasons why this was important for us to do. I wanted to really get into some of these other reasons other than what we've just mentioned in the previous slide. And a lot of that on a TLDR basis is covered from an ease of use and efficiency perspective. So first, let's talk about the delineation between our compliance management and policy management features. With compliance management, we are focused on helping you to understand your compliance posture, provide tools to report to auditors, and surface compliance risks in a way that help you to take action. We are focused primarily on increasing compliance visibility of checks, violations, and audit events throughout the entire DevSecOps lifecycle. We will also enforce compliance posture through using a compliance pipeline to ensure specific compliance-related jobs are run on pipelines for all projects in a group. On the other hand, policy management works hand in hand with compliance programs, as well as supporting scalable security initiatives. Policies gives organizations a central location to globally enforce security controls, compliance controls, and to automate security and compliance workflows. Security policies will continue to address core use cases across the lifecycle, such as defining enforcement around CI component usage, blocking risks related to dependency/package management, and automation of vulnerability management workflows to address security and compliance controls. So why the change? Well, it has to do with there being fundamentally two ways in which teams could actually enforce compliance posture. One way is via compliance pipelines, as previously mentioned, and the other way is via security policies. What we heard from users is that they do not want two different ways to enforce jobs to be run as part of a project pipeline. Instead, what they wanted was a single unified solution that combined the flexibility of compliance framework pipelines with the simplicity of scan execution policies. As such, we made a decision to migrate compliance pipelines to security policies. Not only does this make it clear and simple to the user how and when to enforce jobs as part of a project pipeline, but it also makes it clear what the differences are between compliance management and policy management in GitLab, in that compliance management is focused on compliance visibility, and policy management is focused on compliance and security enforcement across your entire GitLab instance. Awesome. Now that I've covered off that context, let's talk about timelines for moving compliance pipelines to pipeline execution policy. So for your awareness, we have two public issues that communicate not only the stages of work for the deprecation, but also the removal of compliance pipelines. So I have them here, which is the original epic, where we do talk about the work that we're doing. And in particular, we talk about the iteration plan in this epic as well. And we do have a public communication plan that anyone can jump in and take a look to see what are the different communication types, as well as the deadlines and the schedule for us putting out some of the communication for the migration, as well as the removal of compliance pipelines. These two screenshots on the slide can be found in those two epics. And again, I'll be providing the links to both of them in the description of this YouTube video. And I wanted to really highlight these two screenshots because they provide a really good overview of what we're planning to do from an iteration and rollout standpoint. I won't read word for what's on there. Obviously, feel free to pause this video to do so or jump into the links that I'll provide in the YouTube video. The points that I will cover off, however, are threefold. So firstly, as you can see, the work phases have been split over multiple release dates. We're doing this for the purpose of ensuring that not only is the rollout gradual, but it gives you time to move over to security policies, as well as giving us an avenue for multiple different times to communicate this change to you, the customer. Secondly, as you can see from the communication plan, we also have multiple dates in which we will be communicating these changes to you, which will include multiple different channels, such as blog posts, YouTube videos such as this, updates to those two issues, as well as communications via your CSMs. And this is to ensure that you're not only fully aware of all the stages of work that's to be done, but also aware of the other features that are coming out of this deprecation and removal, such as the upcoming migration workflow, which will come out hopefully in 17.4, as well as pipeline execution policy types. Thirdly, we'll also be undertaking a batch rollout even during the removal stage in 18.0. And what we mean by batch rollout is that we'll be making changes to a small number of customers bit by bit to ensure that the blast radius of this change, i.e. this removal, is manageable, and that we're able to fix any issues that might crop up if you do run into them, and to give us the opportunity to either accelerate or decelerate the change based on your feedback on whether or not you've managed to move your compliance pipelines over in time or not. Now that we've covered off the rollout plan, I want to chat about the communication strategy that we're undertaking for this. And again, I'll be posting the links to this communication issue in the description of the YouTube video. I won't be going through line by line on this. Again, feel free to pause and zoom in if you want a closer look, or visit the epic where the communication strategy exists. However, I do want to cover off two quick points. Firstly, this communication strategy lines up with the previously mentioned rollout plan, in that every stage of the rollout plan will be constantly communicating. And the point is to really emphasize this change. And we really want to give you, the customer, updates on the work that we're doing, and to provide updated information on a consistent basis, so that you're not left alone in trying to figure out what you need to do, what stage of work we're at, and when you can move your compliance pipelines over to security policies. Secondly, we've crafted this communication strategy to emphasize over communication, meaning we might cover the same topic again and again in each milestone, such as mentioning why we're making this move, the benefits of using policy execution types, and again, just urging everyone to start moving your compliance pipelines over. And we will do this because we believe that over communication, especially for deprecation of such a key feature, is key. And we want to make sure that everyone gets the sense that, not of urgency, but the sense of needing to prioritize moving your compliance pipelines over as quickly as possible, especially since pipeline execution policy is already available for that to do so as well. So that's all I wanted to cover off in this initial stage of the presentation. I'll now hand it over to Grant to talk about the pipeline execution policy benefits. So over to you, Grant.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks for helping us to better understand the why behind these changes. And what I'd like to do next is kind of talk through this new feature of the pipeline execution policy and some of the benefits that come along with this introduction. It's not only that we're removing or deprecating a feature, but we're adding a lot of new benefits. So let's take a few minutes to talk through those. So first off, we released this new policy type, the pipeline execution policy, in 17.2. So as we develop this feature, we've been spending a lot of time talking with customers who've been using compliance pipelines up to this point, and we've reviewed expansive amounts of feedback and input, which has been great in the public GitLab issues. As Ian shared, part of this effort is to bring clarity between what we're providing in terms of our compliance reporting and features versus what we're offering in terms of security and compliance enforcement. But beyond that, as we do move some things around here, we're also really focused on the new benefits that we're hearing that are highly requested based on experience with compliance pipelines. So some of the high-level benefits that I'll talk through here are better compliance enforcement of CI jobs, simpler management at scale. So if you have a large self-managed instance and many different top-level groups and projects, this will make things a lot easier to manage. You'll get more visibility of where projects are being enforced and how they align with your compliance frameworks. You'll have more granular configurations, such as using policy scopes to essentially line those up with the projects that you want to be enforced. And then flexibility to address multiple types of use cases through enforcing multiple distinct policies at the same time against a project. So these are some of the benefits, but I'd like to then jump into the features that you can utilize to access these benefits. And I broke this down because there are a few different modes that you can use in the pipeline execution policy. So we'll first talk about, regardless of the mode, some of the benefits you'll see across the board. First, this feature helps to enforce CI, custom CI execution across of all types in your projects. So this could be used to enforce, for example, GitLab scanners. You could enforce third-party security scans, external UAT requirements, custom checks and scripts. And an example here would be a custom reporting script for compliance purposes. So essentially anything you can do in CI, you could use this tool to enforce it globally for security and compliance purposes. Next, comparing to compliance pipelines, with the pipeline execution policy, you would no longer need to define stages in the project's CI configuration downstream when using inject mode and reserve stages. So I kind of want to jump across over here to the inject mode. Jobs defined in your pipeline execution policy are enforced regardless of the downstream projects that you have. You've configured your CI file, and jobs in reserve stages then also run in isolation. So this ensures that the jobs are tamper-proof. For example, that there's no meddling with before and after scripts. Developers also cannot run jobs in these reserve stages, so they must you must configure the jobs in the policies themselves. Reserve stages further ensure compliance by running first and last. So these stages run before even a .pre or after a .post stage in the project pipelines, and this helps to ensure compliance. I think I skipped over the point above that's across the board. Variables defined in your policy also take the highest precedence. So variables cannot be used as a means to skirt requirements when they are properly defined in the policy. And then lastly, I wanted to note that policies are flexible, and this gives you options for enforcement. So you can ensure that jobs are either injected in the project's pipeline using inject mode in the reserve stages, or you can use override mode and entirely block management of CI from the project level. So yeah, I think I duplicated that slide. That's what I wanted to cover. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. And what I shared here are a couple of high-level benefits. I went deeper into each of the individual capabilities of the new pipeline execution policy type in this video. So I'll provide a link in the notes and maybe in a cap over the top of the video. So if you're interested, feel free to dig in and learn more. Next, I wanted to move on from the capabilities to highlight a few tips to be aware of when moving from compliance pipelines to pipeline execution policies. So again, I broke this down across the different types of modes. And first off, when executing pipelines that are enforced by a pipeline execution policy, you must ensure that users, bots, and tokens have read access to the pipeline execution YAML that you've defined remotely in your policy. If the file is publicly accessible, for instance, and only contains configuration information, no further access is required. Alternatively, you can add users, tokens, or bots to the project as a member with a reporter role. And you'll also need to ensure that the group or project has been linked, that you're enforcing has been linked to the security policy project containing your policy, and that they are within the scope of the policy. So you want to ensure that you have the right access and permissions set up to ensure that the policies are executed. Within inject mode, we have a couple of notes here to be aware of. Job names, for one, in inject mode today, job names in CI are required to be unique. So when using, for example, some templates or includes within your pipeline execution policy YAML, be sure to customize the jobs in a way that they are unique. So I have an example here. You, instead of using SAST, you might use policy SAST to ensure that the job is unique. If there are collisions, this can result in a failed pipeline in downstream projects. However, this does prevent pipelines from running without those required jobs until that has been remedied within the project. And I have an asterisk here just to make note. We are actually working on a feature enhancement for inject mode to make this process smoother so we can easily handle collisions. So stay tuned on that. Next, when defining pipeline execution policies with inject mode, we also recommend using reserve stages. So these are the pipeline policy pre or pipeline policy post stages. This ensures isolation of those jobs and allows you to run the jobs without requiring the defined stages in the project CI YAML. Essentially, these stages occur or are enabled implicitly within your project pipelines. You can, however, use custom stage names if you've already coordinated with those project teams to configure their CI YAML to contain the stages that you need. And so we have plenty of customers who've already done that with compliance pipelines, as that's a requirement. So you can continue to leverage that work. But if you do define a custom stage that doesn't exist in the downstream project, that can result in a failed pipeline. And the last tip I wanted to share for today is in using override mode. If you're migrating from compliance pipelines and you're looking for the lowest barrier to entry, override mode is an option. This allows you to point your policy to an existing compliance YAML. It will override the project CI in the downstream project entirely. And when using this mode, you can still define that project include to allow downstream projects to run the project CI first, and then you could run the compliance jobs similar to compliance pipelines. Or another use case is if you want to remove that project include, you can entirely override the downstream project, ensuring that pipelines are configured through like a center of excellence, and the downstream project teams do not have control over that at all. So this behavior, again, it's very similar to compliance pipelines, but there are a few differences. So I'll make note, we'll also enforce the jobs to run in projects that don't have a GitLab CI YAML file. So if you have compliance pipelines today and you have some projects that don't have this file, they may not be executed today, and they will when you migrate. And then variable precedence will also change as variables defined in the pipeline execution policy will take precedence over downstream projects. And we'll be adding a lot more around this in our documentation and as we add the migration workflow that Ian referenced. So stay tuned on that, but I wanted to share a few tips in advance. And then lastly, for many that are working on migrating, reconfiguring the jobs as needed to enforce with the inject mode, we feel that's going to give you the maximum benefit as we've added the most features and capabilities there. That gives you the reserved stages and the latest and greatest that we have. And the override mode would alternatively give you the most seamless path forward if you're looking for the least impact to your current state using compliance pipelines. So that's all I wanted to share for the moment. We are, of course, always listening to feedback, so please do pass that on across to us, and we'll be sharing more communication in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant. And yeah, that's all for us from us this morning. So as mentioned, we will be back with more information about the migration workflow from compliance pipelines to security policies. And hopefully that will come out for the 17.4 release. But in the meantime, just be aware of the fact that the deprecation notice is out for 17.3, and the removal of compliance pipelines is slated for 18.0. So thank you all for listening, and we will catch you at the next one. See you next time.